Chapter 101 The silver arrow that could shatter Midgard approached the ground. As she watched it, Bennett Nash was already preparing for her next move. I couldn't care less what Midgard ends up becoming as a result of this skill. It was not a lie when she said she felt this way. But at the same time, she had the conviction that this would not happen. It was because Ruppes had Lithrasir, which could cut through magic. If it was a normal person wielding it, it would be impossible to cut such a huge silver arrow, but the current wielder was not normal. It was Ruppes. Therefore, she will definitely cut it down. Bennett Nash was convinced of this. But even if it was her, there was bound to be some kind of opening the moment she cut through the magic. Even if Ruppes understood this, she had no choice but to stop the attack. If she dodged it instead, Midgard would really be blown away. That very moment would be a good opportunity for Bennett Nash. The time it would take her to cut the arrow would probably only be a moment, but this would absolutely be a good opportunity for Bennett Nash. After breaking through her limits, this moment would be like several minutes to her. She could win by aiming for that moment when Ruppes was defenseless and launching an all-out attack. But Bennett Nash's expectations were overturned in the next moment. Unbelievably, her sure kill attack, which used all her magic power, stopped just before the ground. Ruppes stopped it with one hand, completely killing off the momentum. What? With just one hand? I'm giving it back. Ruppes threw the arrow, while Bennett Nash evaded it. After missing its target, the arrow pierced through the stratosphere into S.P.A.C.E. and struck a distant planet which was even larger than Midgard. It penetrated the planetary core, utterly destroying it. The attack was meant so that Bennett Nash could create an opportunity to catch Ruppes off guard, but instead, it was Bennett Nash who was caught off guard. A momentary stiffness. This was an opening created unconsciously. She was defenseless. It was less than 1/10 of a second in real time, but it would be enough for Ruppes to defeat her opponent. However, Ruppes did not pursue Bennett Nash, letting the opening slip by. Was she holding back? Was she leaving some leeway? Or perhaps she was just being complacent. None of them were right. Ruppes wanted to show her respect to Bennett Nash and decided to give her a complete defeat. A complete victory required her to not make any surprise attacks on her opponent. She needed to face her opponent's full power up front. Thus, Ruppes allowed Bennett Nash's opening to slip by. She did not want a pointless victory by making surprise attacks on an opponent who was off guard. Ruppes' face was turned violently ferocious. Her crimson eyes shone like a flame. Bennett. I will show you what mana transaction M.U.Tashin is. Rejoice, this is still an experimental skill. I haven't shown it to anyone yet. Alchemy worked on physical materials, but it was considered impossible to trans.M.U.Te using magic as a base material. To be precise, it was possible to trans.M.U.Te mana into materials, but it was pointless to do so since magic would eventually revert back into mana. This was common sense in alchemy. Anyone who dabbled in alchemy would know it. But Ruppes now knew that this information was not right. Transaction M.U.Tashin using mana as the base material was possible. And proof of this could be found everywhere in the world. Transaction M.U.Te Winter of Wolves. At Ruppes' declaration, the surrounding mana coalesced and stabilized. It then took the forms of wolves and a pack of several hundred wolves charged at Bennett Nash. Wolf-shaped magic? It was certainly so. Since magic turned mana into phenomena, it had to be magic. There was nothing surprising about it having the shapes of wolves. After all, there were magic in the forms of birds, beasts, and even humanoids. The water magic Apsaras was one such example. What is this? Why does an existence created by mana have its own ego and attack according to its own judgment? This is critically different from my own magic. In fact, these seem more like demons than magic. Bennett Nash thought so, but this did not change what she needed to do. It didn't matter whether it was a demon or magic. She just had to kick all of them into smithereens. Do you intend to beat me with just this level of attack? A flash of silver dashed forth and the wolves were defeated one after another. The wolves were slashed apart, losing their forms and reverting to mana. The Mana then ACCU. Malated behind Ruppas. When all the wolves were defeated, the Mana fully ACCU. Malated and formed a giant wolf. With a body no less than 200 meters long, this giant wolf king was even bigger than Ares. It stared at Bennett Nash and bared its fangs. Transaction M.U.Te, the thing that shakes the earth. Ruppas laughed eerily as the G.O.D eating wolf opened its maw and roared. The unspeakable wolf's roar became a wave of destructive energy that swallowed Bennett Nash. Her entire body was torn in an instant and an enormous amount of blood flowed. Only Bennett Nash could have endured it without losing any of her body parts. If it had been anyone else, there would not even be any bones left. However, she finally reached her limit and fell to her knees on the ground. Her heartbeats were annoying, her fingers were shaking, and her vision was becoming blurred. She understood what this meant. I have reached my limit. If possible, I want to make one final blow. But it seems I only have enough power left to make a full power attack. As she thought this, Bennett Nash laughed involuntarily. Oh, it's the same. It's the same situation as the last time. It was like this 200 years ago. She was cornered to the point where she had to gamble it all with one final attack in an attempt to reverse the situation. At that time, some boring people got in the way, but it was different this time. Bennett Nash put all her remaining power into her right arm and looked straight at her nemesis. Let's go, Muffle. Let's end it with this attack. Oh, yes. Come on then, Bennett. She spoke the same line as before. Ruppas understood and replied in the same manner. That beckoning gesture was also the same as last time, making it both hateful and endearing. Now then, the stage that I longed for is right before me. The continuation of that day is finally here. Bennett Nash's expression distorted in delight as her eyes burned with a deep red color. Oh. Regardless of victory or defeat, this would be the end. By burning even her life force, Bennett Nash's attack was like a meteor. She charged straight at Ruppas at her maximum velocity, faster than anything she had ever been able to reach even in her several hundred years of existence. On the other hand, Ruppas also went straight ahead. She decided against using feints and raised her right arm to receive the attack up front. Their arms crossed and fresh blood danced between them. The one bleeding was Ruppas. Bennett Nash's all-out attack tore into her shoulder, leaving behind a wound that was not shallow. But unfortunately, even though it was not shallow, the wound was not deep enough either. Although she was bleeding profusely, the wound did not reach her bone. Ruppas could easily recover from a wound of this extent. On the other hand, Ruppas' sword had pierced Bennett Nash's heart. The sword served as a plug, preventing excessive bleeding. However, anyone could see that it was a fatal wound. In other words, the victor had been determined. Bennett Nash could not defeat Ruppas. She was relieved. After realizing this fact, Bennett Nash smiled with a sense of self-ridicule. Still couldn't reach you, huh? In her heart, she felt that it was frustrating and mortifying. After all, it was the first time ever in her life that she had a goal and the first time she ever had a rival. Yet in the end, she still could not surpass her even once. Until her final moments, she was only ever chasing after Ruppas' back. With a plop, her arms dropped down as her body lost its strength. Are you satisfied? Bennett. Don't be a fool. Losing is the worst. All that remains is a lingering attachment. Her eyes could not see anymore, yet strangely, she could hear Ruppas' hateful voice clearly. Are you satisfied with this? As always, it showed how much leeway she always had. But that was the kind of person Ruppas was. If Bennett Nash got angry over it every time, there would be no end to it. But I feel like my heart has gained closure. It's not bad. You just said that it was the worst. Shut up. She collapsed as her legs lost their strength. However, her body was embraced by Ruppas. Bennett Nash no longer had the strength to push her away, so she simply entrusted herself to Ruppas. It seems my vitality is ending here. She had a lingering attachment, but there was no regret. This was a battle in which all possible outcomes were accepted, a fight that she yearned for. And it had finally been realized. The result was disappointing, but she certainly felt that she was alive right at that moment. So, yeah, it wasn't bad. Although it was only for a short while, the time that had stopped for her finally began to flow again. Even if it was just for a few moments, it was still more fulfilling than the 200 years that she spent in stagnation. Muffle, did you know that this would happen? Yeah, didn't I say it before? That I will definitely return. Humph, stupid, you made me wait too long. Despite the hateful words spewing from her mouth, Bennett Nash could not stop smiling. In her mind, she recalled the old days spent with the people whom she acknowledged: Alioth, Dubhi, Fekta, and Mizar. Now that I think about it, those days weren't so bad. Even while vowing to have a rematch with Rupaz, she stood by her as they fought for world domination. They were considered to be companions as well as rivals to her, the fearsome vampire princess. That was why she could not forgive any form of betrayal. That was why she was angry at them. She did not regret not helping them. They simply reaped what they sowed. She did not intend to apologize or repent. But, yeah, I'll forgive them somewhat. Now that I think about it, I don't really hate them. Hey. Hold me a little tighter. My body feels like it's fading away. Oh, I understand. Alioth and the others have already said on. This time, it's my turn. That is all there is to it. There's some kind of fluid in my mouth. It's probably blood, but I can no longer taste it. Bennett Nash forcefully swallowed it. Her consciousness felt distant and she realized her end was near. Muffle. Do you really think you can change the world? This is the playground of the G.O.Dis, we're no different from the magical beasts in the arena. The G.O.Dis looks down from the distant heavens to see us struggling. How are you going to fight someone like that? I'm collecting various hands to play. Everything is going well now. The G.O.Dis may also be preparing various things. Well, there's no problem. After all, I have some talented subordinates. Rupaz said as she thought of her subordinates. They would surely do well. Since she had such confidence and trust, she could allow herself to play the role of the G.O.Dis toy and clown, continuing to dance to her tune. Although she was awake now due to a little shock, she would soon return to slumber again. And then, she would wander about like a sleepwalking patient with sleepy eyes, baiting the G.O.Dis to let down her guard. In particular, she is talented. If it is Ophiuchus, she would certainly do well. I haven't heard of her. Aren't there 13 people in the 12 stars if you include the twins? She is the 13th star that even the 12 stars are unaware of. 200 years ago, no, she started taking actions on my orders even before that. I'm here in this way right now because she was able to outsmart the G.O.Dis. So everything is in the palm of your hand? I don't like this. Bennett Nash muttered in annoyance, yet she was relieved in her heart. Truly, the person she regarded as her rival was a terrifying being. To be able to outsmart the G.O.Dis and make her dance in the palm of her hand, she was such an abominable woman. That was why she could think, it's fine, she won't lose to the G.O.Dis. It was rather frustrating, but she could not imagine her losing. That's fine. Don't lose to anyone. You should continue acting like who you are, just be the absolute powerhouse that I admire. As long as you do that, it would all have been worth it. Muffle. What is it? Don't ever lose. Now that you've won against me, if you lose to someone else, I'll beat you up even if I have to come back from the underworld. Oh, don't worry. I won't lose. Rupaz's forceful response brought a sense of satisfaction to Bennett Nash. A few seconds of silence said between them, then Bennett Nash spoke once more. Hey, Muffle. What? Did I manage to become your rival? What a stupid question. You're the one who has ever chased after me so far in order to defeat me. Perhaps, you are the only one who understands me the most. I see. Bennett Nash did not reveal her thoughts regarding Rupaz's reply. However, one could somehow discern that she was happy. A few seconds later, Bennett Nash spoke again. Hey, Muffle. What? Are you still there? I'll be here until the end. Don't worry. Her consciousness was finally drifting away and she was losing sense of her body. It was almost time to say goodbye. Bennett Nash felt the truth of this strongly. But still, it wasn't bad, if the place to die was in the arms of her rival. Hey, Muffle. What is it? Thank you. Those were the last words she uttered. Thereafter, Bennett Nash did not speak anymore nor did she move. Ruppaz gently laid Bennett Nash down and pulled out the blade stuck in her heart. She cleaned her body using healing divine magic. Her sleeping face was full of comfort with a gentle smile that she rarely ever showed. Gently stroking her hair, Ruppaz pondered. Just as Bennett Nash saw Ruppaz as her goal, Bennett Nash was Ruppaz's goal. When she was still immature, the vampire princess was already known as the strongest humanoid. Along with the Dragon King, Demon King, and Lion King, she reigned as one of the four powers. Ruppaz, who was still weak at that time, wanted to be just like her. She strongly yearned to be powerful like the vampire princess, repelling all irrationalities and not losing to anyone. Bennett Nash wondered if she was considered a rival by Ruppaz, but that was incorrect. It was Ruppaz who thought so first. Ruppaz was the first to see Bennett Nash as a rival, aiming to become just as strong. I'm the one who should be thanking you. If it wasn't for you, I wouldn't be this strong. Thank you, Bennett, rest in peace. She said her words of farewell and raised her head. There were 10 vampires, possibly Bennett Nash's subordinates, standing nearby. She could tell at a glance that none of them were ordinary people. Their levels, even the weakest is level 500. They're probably survivors of the battle from 200 years ago. As Ruppaz recalled, Bennett Nash challenged her alone 200 years ago. She also did not predict I.P.8 in the fight against the Demon King. In other words, the elites from that time were left behind until now. But even so, they were no match for the current Ruppaz. If she wished, she could kill everyone in the blink of an eye. You must be Ruppaz Muffle-sama. Yes. Are you Bennett Nash's subordinates? We are not her subordinates. We are her tools. All of us had dedicated everything to her. She was rather adored, wasn't she? The vampires looked upon the peaceful, sleeping face of Bennett Nash and gently carried her body. Then, they lowered their heads deeply to Ruppaz. Thank you, ruler of the Black Wings. You have fulfilled your promise to our master. You don't hate me. This is what our master wanted. Be it victory or defeat, life or death, we would always prioritize the will of our master. Despite saying so, they were probably feeling conflicted inside. One vampire standing in the back clenched his fist until it was dripping blood, while another vampire tapped on his shoulder. Our master is surely satisfied, that is, our greatest pleasure. You don't have to force yourselves. As Ruppaz said this, the vampire who was bowing previously raised his head and struck with his fist. But before it could hit Ruppaz, another vampire grabbed his arm and stopped the attack. At that moment, he opened his eyes and realized that he was being rude. Perhaps, this was the result of being unconsciously driven by anger. He immediately lowered his head and held his fist tightly. Excuse me. Please forgive my rudeness. Apologies, but we will be taking our leaves now. We must conduct a state funeral for our master. The vampires turned their backs on Ruppaz and flew away. They did not even look back once, but it was obvious that their eyes would be full of hate and grief. This was because, the eyes of the vampire who lashed out earlier were bleeding tears of blood. She was very much adored, truly. Ruppaz muttered and picked up the twin swords on the ground. She started walking through the wasteland caused by the battle to rejoin Dina and the rest. However, her footsteps were somewhat heavy. Chapter 102 Hi, Ruppaz here. Currently, I'm thinking back on what happened earlier as I fly over to regroup with Dina and the others. Although my memory of what happened after I was beaten to a pulp by Bennett Nash is kind of vague, I distinctly know that I have defeated Bennett Nash. But what was that earlier? Actually, I know what happened. When I was cornered by Bennett Nash, the real Ruppaz probably came out and defeated her. I can understand that much. What I can't understand is why do I feel like I was the one who did it. I wasn't watching from a third-person perspective while someone else was controlling my body. I wasn't sealed away while the real Ruppas fought. That was, actually me. I was the one who did it. How should I say this? For example, if a guy gets drunk and becomes bold enough to do something he normally wouldn't do, it's still something he himself did and not the result of a dual personality. It may be a bit confusing, but if I have to forcefully make an A.N.A.logi, it would be something like this. At that time, I also pointed at myself and said, I was asleep. And more accurately, how do I say this? I remember waking up back then. My consciousness became clear and I felt as if my shackles had been removed. This has happened several times so far. This was particularly noticeable when I was fighting Scorpius. Back then, I was taking pleasure in the fight itself. I am gradually losing myself. Is it A.S. simulation? Or am I being absorbed? In any case, I have changed a lot compared to the moment I came to this world. There was something strange right from the beginning. Even though I lived in the peaceful nation of J.A.Pan, it was disconcerting to find myself killing living creatures so easily. Although I no longer know how many times it has been, I once again feel that my initial thoughts were too naive. I thought I still had some time, but it was ridiculous. Perhaps, from the start, I never had time. If it continues like this, I don't know what will happen to me when Ruppas fully wakes up. Will I be A.S. simulated as before? Or will I be completely taken over and disappear? This state is probably not what the G.O.Dis intended. Since she considers Ruppas to be a disturbance, she probably won't be happy about her awakening. Is this a blunder of the G.O.Dis? She wanted to seal off Ruppas' strong will, yet she prepared a weak cover like me. If this is true, then the G.O.Dis is too dumb. Besides, what did I say when I was fighting Bennett Nash? Everything is going according to plan. I certainly said that back then. What exactly is going according to plan? What was I thinking to say something like that? Even though it was me, I myself do not know. Who exactly am I? Leo https://handofvecna.blogspot.com. Let's turn the clock back a little. Acting independently from Ruppas, Ares, and the others rode in Tanaka and approached Tyrfing. Although they were concerned about their master, they felt that since it was her, she wouldn't lose to Bennett Nash. She had not fought seriously since her return, but that was only because there was no opponent that required her to take things seriously. Therefore, if Ruppas became serious, it would be impossible even for Bennett Nash to win. It was exactly because they had absolute trust in her that Ares and the others were able to continue +H.I+NG on towards their goal of defeating Leon despite being distracted by what they had left behind. We can see it now. It's that place that's surrounded by a wall, right? I have detected many biological signatures. They match Snakakin, Giants, and Buggen. There's no mistake. This is Tyrfing. After seeing a city surrounded by city walls through Tanaka's window, Ares shouted out. Libra further confirmed it. Tanaka transformed into its flying mode and flew into the sky. They looked down on the streets of Tyrfing from high above. The fortified city was divided into several districts by walls, separating the areas inhabited by various demi-humans. As a result, the residence of Plantkin, such as Dryads, was a forest, while the district for merfolks on the other side of the wall had holes filled with seawater. It was a horrible mess when seen from above. In the city center, there was an unnecessarily large castle that seemed to be showing off its presence. In all likelihood, Leon was in there. Now, what should we do? Do we enter? Karkanos looked at everyone and asked. However, Libra and Dina spontaneously waved their hands, rejecting the idea. No. The castle may have traps set by Sagittarius. There may be traps in the city too. Well, there's no need to fight in the enemy's territory. The opposition had Sagittarius, a trap specialist, and he should be expecting their arrival. So was there any need for them to step into his territory? There was no need to step into it if they already knew there would be a trap. After making that decision, Libra transformed her right arm into a cannon and stepped out of Tanaka. After seeing this, the others realized what she was going to do and moved on to Tanaka's roof. We know where they are, so there's only one thing to do, that is a preemptive strike. Libra aimed the cannon at the castle. In her vision, a red icon marked Leon's location in the castle. A target lock-on marker was displayed as well as the shot's accuracy. At the same time, Agakeros increased his magic power, Dina raised her hands, and Ares created a flame in his hand. Scorpius took a deep breath, while Karkanos just stood there with nothing to do. The right scale, Zubin el-Janubi, maximum output, fire. Die. Deneb Aljdi. Aquajudge Gavel. A familiar flash of destructive light emitted from Libra's arm, while a black wave was released from Agakeros' hand. Dina's magic created a Ma.S.Sieve amount of water which crashed into the castle like a gavel used by a judge. It was a rather big gavel though. Messertham version 3. Graphias. Ares generated and shot a huge fireball, which he named version 3. It seemed he was aware that it was being used in a way different from its intended purpose. Meanwhile, Scorpius exhaled a poisonous breath called Graphias. The breath system was originally a skill used by dragons, but since she was the queen of poisons, poisonous attacks were her specialty. On the other hand, Karkanos regretfully had no opportunity to act. His special skill, Acubens, was a counter skill that would activate after he was being attacked, so he must wait for the opponent to attack first. And that was his only offensive skill. If Karkanos could not activate that skill, he could only make normal attacks. Among his other skills, there was Tegmine which could increase his defenses. When he was incapable of combat, Alterf could be activated to double the damage output of his allies, even breaking through the damage limit. In order to attract physical attacks to himself, he could use Acellus Borealis. Ruppes would say that it's just a skill that could alter the enemy's target. Acellus Australis, on the other hand, attracts magical attacks to himself. These were the main skills of Karkanos. It was obvious that none of the skills in his lineup could be used to attack at will. He was definitely excellent as a wall, but he was merely a scarecrow in a situation like this. That was why Krebsan had no role to play now. While Karkanos was busy being an ornament, the attacks of Libra and the others struck the castle, causing a huge explosion. Fortunately, Dina deployed AS.H.I plus Eld around the castle, significantly reducing the damage to other parts of the city. However, it was a catastrophe inside the castle itself. Anyway, this was the first strike. Most of the traps in the castle should have been destroyed. However, the opponent was Leon, the strongest male of the 12 heavenly stars. Such attacks would not be enough to kill him, so everyone began preparing for another attack. Fire again. Use long-ranged attacks to shave away Leon's endurance. If he was too proud to come out of his castle, then it was fine. All they had to do was to turn the castle into his grave. Having made such a judgment, Libra aimed once again, but her expression turned grave in the next moment. Tisk, he's coming. Everyone, spread out. Libra gave the command and everyone flew away without question. Immediately after, a man jumped out of the castle with tremendous pressure and broke through the roof of Tanaka. However, gravity pulled him down and he landed on the ground. He was a huge man over 2 meters tall. He shook his reddish-black mane-like hair and stared at his former comrades with eyes of a carnivore. He was wearing a black skin-tight bodysuit, while his lower half was covered in torn trousers. He raised the edge of his mouth into a smile. Yo, aren't there a lot of nostalgic faces? If he were to be described in as few words as possible, it would be a Ma.S.S of muscles. With well-developed biceps, steel-like pectoral muscles, and 8-pack abdominal muscles, he looked significantly different from the good-looking members of the 12 heavenly stars, such as Ares and Karkanos. Although he was not ugly, he was certainly out of place among them. One could say that he was full of manliness, but it was more like the ferocity of a wild beast. Comparatively, the adventurer Jean and the mercenary Gantz appeared far more rational. A centaur with thick facial features, Sagittarius, stood next to him. Just one of them would have been enough, but the two of them together was simply overwhelming. As if saturated with the smell of manly sweat, the place seemed to be filled with masculine odor. Why did Ruppes make Leon's humanoid form like this? Even though the other 12 heavenly stars were made up of good-looking people, these two seemed to be emanating masculinity in a bad way. But Ruppaz didn't even come. This looks like it's gonna be a boring fight. Oh, you dare say that? You're just a traitor. Against Leon, who spat those words out, Agakeros became enraged and covered his body with black mana. Despite seeing him transform from an old gentleman into a goat-headed devil, Leon was unmoved. Instead, he seemed to be beckoning Agakeros to come at him. You'll regret this. Agakeros charged and punched Leon in the face. The punch's shockwave blasted the trees behind Leon away. However, Leon did not change his expression, merely staring coldly at Agakeros without turning his head. What is this? Isn't this a rather lukewarm punch? A punch should be thrown like this. Roaring, Leon's punch struck Agakeros in the face. With that alone, the magical beast known as the Devil King was blown away, crash.h.i+ng through the city wall. His momentum demolished countless buildings as he flew into Tirfing and vanished. Agakeros? You. Agitated that his close friend was struck, Ares jumped and delivered a kick at Leon's thick neck. Leon evaded it with only a slight movement and readied a punch to counterattack. However, Scorpius was faster, using her hair to wrap around his arm and sealing his movement. Then, the sting at the tip of her tail pierced Leon's neck and delivered her poison. Ha ha ha. Be more careful, idiot-san. You should know the effects of this Mistress Shola skill. Once poisoned, its effects cannot be removed except by using an elixir or the highest tier divine magic. It doesn't matter how strong you are finished. Oh, and the poison won't disappear. So what? Leon laughed and grabbed the hair entwined around his arm. Then, he said as if he wasn't even affected. You're the idiot. If that's the case, it'd all be fine if I just kill all you B.A.S.T.A.R.ds before the poison fully takes effect. He pulled her hair and slammed his fist into Scorpius' belly. This was followed by the ominous sound of something breaking as fresh blood flowed from Scorpius' violet lips. As soon as Scorpius was blown away, a crash.h.i+ng sound was heard from a faraway place beyond where the eye could see. Seeing this, Ares couldn't help but be fearful. He was truly strong. He was unbelievably and simply strong. Chapter 103 I suggest you stop getting ahead of yourself, Leon. Libra's eyes shone and a curtain of light formed around her. Ares and Dina, who were present earlier, were excluded from the field. Only Leon, Sagittarius, and Libra remained in that location. Seeing this isolated S.P.A.ce, Leon and Sagittarius instantly realized what was going to happen. It's coming. The greatest destructive power among the 12 heavenly stars had buried countless warriors in the past. White light converged on Libra and she shone like a star. The light expanded and pulsated. Brachium, activate. The star exploded. An even more vibrant light ran through and violated the field of light. It was like a storm of light. Colorful particles scattered, penetrating all defenses. Neither divine magic nor skill was meaningful. Brachium was placed at the top of all abilities and took precedence without exception. In other words, once this skill was activated, the target would surely die if it did not have more than 100,000 HP. It was a cheat among cheats. Ruppaz once said, in terms of attack power, it may be higher than me. This was a violence of the upper allowable limits, reserved for defense of the G.O.Dis sanctuary. And that vortex of light was easily overcome by Leon. Warm. Ain't it? Leon extended his steel-like arm, while Libra crossed her arms to defend. Her steel arms received the impact, which caused cracks to appear. With just one punch, Libra's body was blown away and the field of light scattered. Brachium certainly worked. The damage was actually inflicted. However, it wasn't enough as Leon probably had too much HP. As if he did not care about it at all, Leon shortened the distance between himself and Libra. On the other hand, Sagittarius was barely conscious and could be seen using an item out of the corner of one's eye. Oh. Tisk. Libra jumped to evade Leon's second attack and stopped in midair. Truly, despite being a rotten traitor, he was still the strongest among the 12 heavenly stars. He couldn't be challenged with a straightforward approach. In that case, she would need to show all her cards as well. Having arrived at that conclusion, Libra called for her new armament, which had been approved by her master beforehand. Armament selection. Astrea. In response to Libra's call, the golem launcher in faraway Blutgong opened and steel wings flew out. The armament named Astrea rushed to Libra's side at supersonic speed and provided fire support by shooting lasers at Leon, who was about to jump. Oh! Surprised, Leon was shot down as Astrea turned in the sky. This was followed by a second and a third shot. The lasers from the cannons checked Leon's movement. Of course, Leon would not be defeated by such attacks. However, while he was distracted, Libra and Ares closed in on him and delivered a blade attack and a flaming kick respectively. Seeing this, Leon dodged the kick, but received a cut to his forehead. There was slight bleeding from the cut skin, but the wound itself was shallow. Annoying. He sent Ares flying with a counterkick and the latter's delicate body crashed into the city wall. However, his continuous punches at Libra were evaded by a paper-thin margin and Libra gained some distance between them. In addition, she fired rays from her eyes while retreating, hitting Leon in the back and causing him to become even more irritated. Taking this opening, Libra flew into the sky and Astrea moved over her. Its shape changed as if it was folding and a red line connected Astrea to Libra. Link. The golem that was specifically constructed for Libra combined with Libra in the air. Astrea's cannons hung over Libra's shoulders while two more guns pointed forward at her waist. Finally, Astrea deployed her wings, giving Libra 3 pairs of steel wings. Combination completed, here I come. What the H.E.L.L is that? It seems she has acquired a new battle mode since we last met. Libra aimed the 4 cannons and her right arm at Leon and Sagittarius, staring down at them sternly. Both opponents were of the 12 heavenly stars. Half-powered attacks would not be sufficient. In that case, there was only one way to do it, by using maximum firepower to destroy them. Maximum firepower, all cannons released, full fire. Libra unleashed a flash of destruction, from her right arm, her shoulders, her waist, and her eyes. Aiming at 7 locations, 7 rays of destructive light shot towards Leon and Sagittarius. Both of them barely dodged the attacks, but the firing did not occur only once. With only slight delays, the two of them were repeatedly bombarded. One shot after another, this was the first field test of the destructive weapon. The incessant bombardment was not ineffective, even against Leon. Clicking his tongue, he jumped to deliver a kick at Libra. However, Libra had gained greater mobility by combining with Astrea. She instantly evaded Leon's attack by increasing her Alt.I.2 and counterattacked with all her cannons. Tisk. Leon turned in the air and landed, looking up at Libra cautiously. Leon would win in terms of pure fighting power, but their compatibility was bad. Although he would not lose, if this continued, he would only be wasting his stamina. Since he did not know when Agacaros and Scorpius would return, he could not afford to focus all his power on Libra alone. Furthermore, Scorpius' poison was slowly shaving away his stamina, thereby increasing his anxiety. As for Ares, whatever was fine. He was originally a fodder monster that was no different from trash. No matter how strong a trash monster became, it would still be trash. He was a prey whose existence as one of the 12 heavenly stars was unnatural to begin with. Such a person could not possibly be a threat. Therefore, whatever was fine with him. As for that blue-haired girl watching in the corner, Leon wasn't sure what to make of her, but it would probably be fine to leave her like this. Sagittarius. Ah! At Leon's shout, Sagittarius drew his bow. Leon grabbed the unreleased arrow by the tip and looked up at Libra. His well-trained hand did not even bleed when holding onto the arrowhead. Al-Nassel. Sagittarius activated his sure-hit skill and the arrow instantly reached Libra. The unavoidable arrow hit Libra's flank, but this was not the actual attack. While grabbing the arrowhead, Leon had moved together with it. Gotcha! Leon's right fist pierced Libra's shoulder, shattering the cannon. Although Libra fell towards the ground with that attack, she managed to recover and fly again at the last moment. But Leon pursued further, blowing her away with a cannon-like kick. After being blown away, Libra penetrated the city wall and crashed into the city itself. Even though it was his own city, Leon crashed through the houses to deliver a -H.I+NG blow to Libra. It was impossible to evade and her defenses would be easily penetrated. Just as she was in danger of destruction, someone interrupted and took Leon's punch with his face instead of Libra. https://handofvecna.blogspot.com whwatt. Tisk, tisk, tisk. Have you forgotten about the existence of me, Leon? His GLA.S.SES broke and the punch's shockwave caused a depression in the ground behind him. Yet, the person who received the blow was unshaken and was simply standing there with a relaxed smile. You can have it back. Acubens. With an elegant form, Karkinos delivered a high kick. But this was not just a kick. It was a counterattack that was imbued with Leon's own attack power. This time, Leon's huge body left the ground and was blown away. While Crash.H.I+NG through the buildings along the way, Leon willfully repositioned himself and landed on the ground. However, Karkinos rushed after him. UB.A.S.T.A.R.D. You're just a useless crab that can only wait for an enemy to attack. Yes. 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 Indeed, me can only do that. But because me can only do that, me won't lose to anyone when it comes down to that. Karkinos made a series of attacks at Leon using scissor blades that he retrieved from somewhere. Of course, they were ineffectual against Leon, serving only to annoy him. But that was enough since that was the aim all along. Leon kicked Karkinos in the chin, causing him to leave the ground for a moment. Then, immediately after that, an even more powerful kick hit Leon's chin, sending him flying into the sky. Karkinos followed up by jumping after Leon. B.A.S.T.A.R.D. Leon, stop. Don't attack. Ignoring Sagittarius' advice, Leon struck with his steel-like arm. The beating sent Karkinos' body spinning, but the centrifugal force added to the counter, which struck Leon in the face and sent him spinning as well. Defense specialization. Karkinos would never make a powerful attack himself. Indeed, he couldn't do it in the first place. His only offensive skill depended on the enemy's attacks, thus he was unsuitable for offensive roles. It wasn't really a lie to say that he was useless. In fact, he was the only one among the 12 heavenly stars who couldn't do anything when they were going on the offense. He ran too slowly, couldn't attack from afar, and did not have large area attacks. There was only one thing he could do: wait to make a counterattack. That was it. However, this allowed him to demonstrate unparalleled power when facing opponents like Leon. Karkinos approached Leon, who was knocked down on the ground. Leon glared at him with murderous intent, channeling all his strength into his fist. Defense? Counterattack? He didn't care about that. If it was hard, he would simply use even greater violence to smash it. Oh. Karkinos was struck by a storm-like series of attacks: punch, back fist, knee strike, elbow strike, upper kick, drop kick, roundhouse kick, and double sledgehammer. He was struck down and then hit up, pus.H.I+NG, the very limits of violence. Karkinos' neat face was smeared with blood in an instant and his body bent back to a great extent. However, his mouth was raised slightly into a smile. In the next moment, Leon paid the price for his reckless violence with his own body. Ha 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 ha. Punch, back fist, knee strike, elbow strike, upper kick, drop kick, roundhouse kick, and double sledgehammer. He was struck down and then hit up. Leon's previous attacks were returned exactly as he delivered them. This time, it was Leon who got bloodied. The damage Karkinos had received was certainly not light. Even if he had the hardest defense, it was impossible to be unaffected by Leon's attacks. But at first glance, he seemed to have the advantage by doing even more damage to Leon. Finally, he kicked Leon into the ground and landed gracefully. Hey! Come on! While looking down at Leon on his knees, Karkinos taunted him further by beckoning with his finger. Furthermore, Dina, who had merely been watching so far, activated her recovery divine magic to fully heal Karkanos. With this, even a battle of attrition by shaving at each other was no longer an option for Leon. In an instant, the situation had reversed. Thinking that the situation was worsening, Sagittarius wanted to move to provide support, but he was stopped by a cannon which was pressed against the back of his head. He knew without looking that it was Libra. Furthermore, Ares finally stood up while stumbling. An illusory giant goat and a monstrous scorpion also appeared in the city. Both of them, who had recovered, were full of murderous intent, having completely forgotten that they were once comrades. After looking at them and laughing bitterly, Karkanos declared suddenly to Leon. Checkmate. The victor has been determined, Leon. Hearing those words, Leon could only clench his teeth. Chapter 104. Once, he believed himself to be the strongest. There was N.O.Body who could match him since the moment he was born. He was born to be at the summit of all magical beasts. The power he was born with was different. The position he was born into was also different. In terms of both basic ability values and their upper limits, Leon was born worlds apart from the others. The creatures around him naturally revered and followed him as their king. In turn, Leon accepted it as a matter of course. Because I'm strong, it's natural for them to obey me. I can do whatever I want with these lower life forms, since my strength grants me absolute authority. He had never thought of other magical beasts as his comrades. He was at the pinnacle while they were just lower life forms. He believed this from the bottom of his heart. In fact, due to the difference in power, N.O.Body could disagree with this. No, the ones who disagreed were killed and eaten by him. Was it arrogance that resulted from an overly high self-esteem? Or perhaps a childish delusion that only he alone was different? No, he would deny both claims. It was simply the truth that he was above them from the beginning. That was all. Thus he asserted his dominance without reservation and indulged in unrestrained violence. There doesn't exist anyone who could fight me on an equal footing. Oh, what a joy it is to have such absolute superiority for being born the king. Since victory was predetermined, he just had to follow through the process to obtain it. We'll win. If we believe in this, it'll come true. As long as we stand united to face the future, we won't lose to beasts. He took pleasure in using simple violence to crush those people who spoke of such nonsense. Even if they believed and hoped for the future, the weak would still be weak and the trash would remain trash. Because of my absolute strength, no matter what those small fries do, they would never resonate with my heart. If you can't accept this, then stop me. But you can't, can you? Then that's all there is to it. In any event, Leon only saw everything other than himself as insignificant bugs. Therefore, he never felt remorse in his heart for what he did nor considered himself to be in the wrong. He never felt that he would lose and never met anyone who could challenge him. He never doubted that the situation would continue like this into the future. It seems that there's a vampire princess, demon king, and dragon king across the sea, but they are probably just small fries anyway. For someone who thought this way, the news was not surprising. When he heard that the Dragon King had been subjugated by a flugel, he merely thought that a small fry had been defeated by another small fry and promptly forgot about it. But eventually, he came to recognize that it was a mistake to think that way. That same flugel Rupasmoffel invaded his territory. It was his first experience. It was natural that one who dominated others by power could also be dominated by power. It was natural to be terrified of the enemy. Is this fear? Is this pain? Is this defeat? These things should never have crossed his path for his entire life, yet they were engraved into him by that woman in a single night. He knew he would win the battle, yet he did not win as he expected. He never imagined that he would be giving it his all to fight a losing battle. I won't admit this, I, like this, would be defeated by a woman. As a result, the battle ended with the defeat of Leon and he became a member of the 12 heavenly stars under Rupas. He was relieved that she did not finish him off, yet he was ashamed of himself for feeling this way. It was the greatest humiliation. For him, being placed in the same group as small fries like Ares was a disgrace that was equivalent to an execution. All of this is just infuriating. There cannot be anyone above me. I won't accept it. That's it. This humiliation must be returned. I won't forgive the existence of Rupa's Muffle. Therefore, I will kill her myself. I won't let anybody else do it. This time, I'll utterly defeat her, push her down, and dye her beauty with fear for making me experience the pain of defeat. I'll bite her white neck while she fearfully begs for her life. I'll eat her without leaving any bones behind. Surely, at that time, I'll become the strongest once more. If one completely devours that unbeatable woman, it'll surely give the same pleasure as being on top. For the first time in his life, Leon had a distorted desire. He was the only one who was different among the 12 heavenly stars. He did not revere nor admire her. Instead, he hated her and held a grudge. He swore that he would kill her one day. His behavior seemed similar to Bennett Nash's, but their secret feelings were completely opposite. Essentially, Bennett Nash's attack on Rupas was a perversion of love. On the other hand, it was pure hatred and murderous intent for Leon. It was different from the warm, familiar feeling given off by Bennett Nash. Therefore, he could not accept that ending. He could not forgive her for disappearing on her own after defeating him. I'll kill you. I should have been the one to kill you, right? Yet you ignored that and lost in a battle on your own. How can I regain my pride now after losing to you? After losing sight of his goal, Leon abandoned his place as one of the 12 heavenly stars and spent his time idly. However, a recent event moved him to take action. He was merely eating the adventurers and demons who ventured too close, yet the magical beasts saw him as their protector. When he finally noticed the creatures that he didn't care about, such as Bugin and Snakakin, they were revering and exalting him as their king. The situation was the same as before. The surrounding creatures were willingly bowing to Leon's absolute strength. This doesn't feel bad at all. That's right, I'm the king, an incarnation of power that others willingly follow even if I don't do anything on my own. It was only natural that this is the case. What is strange is the situation until now. He thought so and allowed them to join him. Actually, he didn't care about the rights of demi-humans and the definition of humanoids. He simply wasn't interested. Despite this, he needed to have a generous heart. And then he thought, that's right. If I take over the world, wouldn't that mean I have Serpa.s. said Rupas. He would completely rule over and dominate this world which even Rupas couldn't accomplish. If he could do this, he would have Serpa.s. said Rupas. Since Rupas was no longer around, he couldn't do so by fighting her. Therefore, he must prove that he had Serpa.s. said her by doing what she couldn't do. But what is happening? Let alone Rupas who returned recently, why am I being cornered by the 12 heavenly stars, who are merely her subordinates? Why am I being pressured by these small fries? I don't like this, I don't like it at all from the bottom of my heart. Leo https://handofvecna.blogspot.com dam.n. It's another thing if it's Rupas, but why am I being cornered by low-grade trash like you guys? Leon forcefully raised his blood-soaked body and glared at his former comrades. Comrades? No, he never once thought of them that way. Everything other than himself was a lower life form, therefore he never had a sense of camaraderie. The truth was that he was strong. If he were to fight one-on-one against anyone here, he could overcome any disadvantage in compatibility and achieve victory. He could even have forcefully overwhelmed Karkinos by virtue of the difference in their constant constitutions. However, if Dina's recovery was added to the mix, there would be nothing he could do. Even if he tried to attack Dina to stop her recovery, he couldn't break through Karkinos' interference. Furthermore, there were Libra, Agakeros, and Scorpius to consider. He was strong, very strong. However, no matter how strong he might be, the opponents were a group of monsters that transcended common sense, the 12 heavenly stars. No matter what they did, it would be impossible for Sagittarius and Leon alone to win this. Shut up, it's annoying. Then, there was a black flash of light. Agakeros unleashed Luna Shooter, a moon-attribute arcane magic, at Leon, and blew his body away. A giant-sized Scorpius grabbed Leon with her pincer and slammed him into the ground. Sagittarius couldn't do anything to help, since a ruthless cannon was still positioned right at the back of his head. No, even if he could move freely, could he really provide support? At least, it did not seem like Libra would allow him to turn the situation around. I'm so sorry. I can't hear the words of a trashy person who even lost to trash. I didn't think that a pile of S.H.I+T like you, who betrayed Rupa-sama, would bark like this. Scorpius screamed hysterically and swung her pincers down again and again. Each time, the ground shook and caved in. There was not a speck of mercy or forgiveness between former comrades. Her world revolved around Rupa's. Every decision was made based on Rupa's as a criteria. Therefore, she no longer considered the traitor Leon to be a comrade. He was just an annoying magical beast. Hey, isn't that so? Say something, hey? Everyone thinks so too, right? Since Rupa-sama is absolutely right, those who would bare their teeth at her must be absolutely bad. Why doesn't this idiot understand such an obvious truth? Oh, I see. You weren't thinking at all, right? Is that why you don't even understand something so obvious? Come on, come on, come on. Sc.R.Pe your filthy head against the ground and apologize to Rupa-sama. Admit that you're a completely horrible idiot and beg for forgiveness. Come on, what are you doing? Speak up, I can't hear you. Are your ears rotten? Just because you're a little strong you think you can be patronizing? I've really hated you since a long time ago. Oh yes, won't it be good if you don't exist, right? That'd be all fine, right? Oh, why didn't I think of something so simple before? But it's okay, since it's still not too late right now. I'll reduce you to minced meat and then Rupa-sama will pat my head and praise me. Oh, Karkanos held onto his forehead as he looked upon Scorpius, who was ranting something incomprehensible while hysterically attacking Leon. Normally, he could still hold a conversation with Scorpius, but once she went berserk, there was no helping it. It's starting again. Everyone thought as they watched the giant scorpion dryly with a disgusted look on their faces. As they watched her go berserk, they even thought that perhaps her behavior back at Blutgong had nothing to do with being brainwashed by the G.O.Dis. She was truly hopeless. Anyway, this was a complete victory. Leon might even be killed if the current situation persisted. They had to think about how to stop Scorpius. Leon was certainly a traitor, but he was still Rupa's hands and feet and a member of the 12 Heavenly Stars. His judgment had to be left to Rupa's herself. As her subordinates, they could not willfully commit an act that would be equivalent to severing her limbs. As such, they couldn't actually kill him, even if it was fine to leave him on the border between life and death. I won't admit it. As a result, they didn't notice that while Leon was being beaten up, his hate was increasing. Or rather, because he was recklessly being cornered, his rationality was no longer effective in holding him back. They should have known that there was at least one person who would see this as an opportunity. Do you desire power? His heartbeat quickened. A female voice resounded his eardrums with gentleness and compa.s.zion. His entire body felt an unprecedented power. This was what he wanted. The thing he was looking for was here right now. The power to Serpa.s.s. Rupas was right before him. You are the strongest magical beast. Therefore, the current situation cannot be permitted to persist. If you so desire, I shall bestow power upon you. An unknown, beautiful woman with blue hair appeared in his mind. She smiled and reached out to Leon. Needless to say, this was the G.O.Dis offering and an invitation to ruin. However, Leon simply raised the edges of his mouth. Power, power. If he had more power, he wouldn't lose to anyone and he could even reach Rupas' level. There was no need for pride. Power was absolutely everything. Weaklings wouldn't even be able to protect their pride, so Leon grabbed the hand without hesitation. No need to pitch the idea, skip this pointless chatter and quickly give it to me. Power, gimme power. Absolute power that won't lose to anyone. Shut up and just give it to me. Very well. I shall grant your wish. The G.O.Dis smiled and put her hand on Leon. At that moment, Leon's body exploded with divine power. Chapter 105 It happened suddenly. The game should have ended. The victor should have been determined. However, it was completely overturned by a rude third party from outside of the game board. With the exception of Scorpius, who was still hysterical, everyone sensed the danger in the unnatural, sacred glow emitted by Leon's entire body. This is bad. Move away, Scorpius. Despite Libra's warning, the berserk Scorpius did not stop. She repeatedly slammed her pincer into Leon without noticing his changes, but it was no longer effective to Leon. Enduring Scorpius' attacks, Leon's body swelled up as he abandoned his human form. A mane replaced his hair, which was like a red lotus. His entire body was covered in fur. Becoming even larger than Scorpius, he revealed the true nature of the ferocious king of magical beasts. This was the Lion King Leon, the strongest magical beast which stood alongside with the Dragon King, the Vampire Princess, and the Demon King. Before the 12 heavenly stars who were stunned by his intimidating presence, Scorpius was swept away by his foreleg as if she was just a nuisance. With that act alone, the giant scorpion was easily blown away, crash.h.i+ng into the city and sliding further along the ground. Gur, oh! The roar of a wild beast, devoid of reason, reverberated. His eyes, full of murderous intent, turned towards the 12 heavenly stars. At the same time, Libra fired all of her cannons, engulfing Leon in an explosion. However, before the smoke even cleared, Leon jumped out and made a sudden attack on Libra and Karkanos, who was standing before her. As Libra and Karkanos were blown away, his hind leg kicked at the approaching illusory form of Agakeros, dissipating it. The latter's true form was then crushed beneath his feet. This. Messer Ares jumped and tried to use Messer them, but Leon simply glanced at him like he was a bug and swept him away with his tail. Dina's golden flash struck him directly, but he was unmoved. A simple glare was enough to send her fleeing through a gate in panic. It was getting out of hand. This was the common impression of the 12 heavenly stars who were currently facing Leon. They knew what had happened as this had happened before. Like the previous fight with Scorpius, the G.O.Dis had probably done something. But the problem was that Leon was the one who was empowered this time while Ruppaz was not present. Leon was already strong, so if the power of the G.O.Dis was added to him, he would Serpa.S all of the 12 heavenly stars here. He did not fear Libra's cannon fire and easily crushed Karkanos' defenses. Even the effects of the poison inflicted by Scorpius had disappeared. Leon breathed in deeply and aimed at the 12 heavenly stars before him: Libra, Karkanos, Scorpius, and Agakeros. Only Ares, who had flown in a different direction, was not within range. Well, it didn't matter. It wouldn't be a hindrance even if such a small fry monster was left out. Leon's pride wouldn't allow him to consider it a hindrance. From his open mouth, he exhaled a breath that was as hot as a star, surging towards the 12 heavenly stars. Even if it was the 12 heavenly stars, it would be hard for them to take this attack head-on. Therefore, what happened next was truly a lifesaver. Everyone, grab on. Just before the roar reached them, they heard Sagittarius' voice. Then, the scorching breath said over, leaving behind a tragic scene where only molten rocks remained. But there were no corpses left behind by the 12 heavenly stars, so they must have somehow evaded the disaster. All that remained were Leon and Ares. Tisk Sagittarius, ub.a.s.t.a.r.d, you've betrayed me. He clicked his tongue in annoyance and looked over to Ares. The latter was glaring at Leon, but he made no move to stand up. I know it already. The difference between his power and mine. Feeling instinctively frightened, he couldn't pull himself up. Leon looked at his posture and snorted. That's a good posture, Ares. You're a trash monster after all. It's only natural for you to appear frightened. What? Isn't it true? You were picked up by Ruppaz, trained by Ruppaz, and empowered by Ruppaz. None of it was your own power. For a piece of trash like you to stand on the same level as us, it makes me wanna puke. He seemed to have lost interest in Ares, who couldn't even stand up. After saying that, Leon jumped away from the spot, leaving behind a cowardly sheep. Ares hung his head in regret, clenching his fists. How pitiful. I'm well aware of it even if Leon didn't say it out loud. More than anybody else, he couldn't forgive himself. However, he couldn't stop trembling, which made him even more miserable. Leo https://handofvecna.blogspot.com. The clock turned back slightly to the time before Aries and the others came into contact with Leon. After separating from Ruppas and the others, SEI and his companions traveled to the Centaur's village on Suzuki, the camping car golem. Even though its interior was not as well furnished as Tanaka, it still made their travel comfortable to an extent that was previously unthought of. This reminded them of how unusual Ruppa's alchemy skills were. It would have been enough that they didn't have to walk on their own. They were certainly thankful that they could move towards their destination at over 60 kilometers per hour. Moreover, Suzuki was equipped with beds, a sofa, a simple bathroom, a toilet, and even a kitchen. Even aristocrats didn't have such a luxurious mode of transportation. There was the demi-dragon carriage, which was used exclusively by the royalty of Laevitian. Instead of horses, it used demi-dragons to pull the carriage. Its interior was luxurious since it was used exclusively by the royal family. However, due to structural problems, the interior of the carriage could not be too big. It wasn't because the demi-dragons were too weak. It was simply that if the carriage was too big, it would be inefficient at turning to the point where it might even be dangerous. But Suzuki was different. Unlike a carriage drawn by horses or demi-dragons, it could turn by itself, so its maneuverability was completely different. Of course, it still couldn't turn in places that were too narrow, but at least it could do finer turns than what was possible for a carriage. Or rather, Suzuki could simply fly over places that it couldn't pass. It was unbelievable, but once when it came to a rocky pass. That it couldn't pass, Suzuki spread its wings and flew over it. It would also automatically repel attacking monsters. There was once when monsters appeared, they went out and readied themselves for the incoming attacks, but Suzuki fired its cannon and blew them away. In other words, there was no need to even fight those monsters that were weaker than Suzuki. By the way, Suzuki was at level 350, which was even higher than Virgo's level. What would this mean? If it was a monster that even Suzuki couldn't win against, SEI and the others wouldn't be able to win either. At that time, they could only leave it to Castor. This meant that they would have no role to play in any event. Amazing, this vehicle called Suzuki, it's even faster and more comfortable than the demi-dragon carriage used by royalty. Even though I have heard that there are automobile golems in Blutgong, they were nothing like this. There's even a bathroom, toilet, kitchen, and beds. It's truly everything one could ask for. As a mercenary, I've traveled all over the world, often riding in horse carriages and demi-dragon carriages. Even so, I've never had such an easy trip. Cruz expressed a genuine compliment about Suzuki's all-inclusiveness, while Gantz was similarly impressed. Apparently, a camping car was a vehicle that was made with super high-level technology that was unknown and undreamed of by them. In fact, they were not wrong. After all, this was a vehicle that was made based on Earth's technology, which was much more advanced than that of Midgard. If Midgard were to develop this on its own, several hundred years wouldn't be enough for its technology to reach this level. Well, that would be true if Mizar, who created Blutgong, was excluded from the considerations. According to Ruppas, Mizar was simply a perverted alchemist cheat with something wrong with his head. Hey, Cruz-san. Do you think we can buy this? If Ruppas wanted to, she could probably just make another one. Let the country fork out 1 million euro or so. If we have this, the difficulty of the next trip would be different. No, Jean-san. Its creation looked easy probably because its maker was Ruppas Moffel, but this would probably be equivalent to a masterpiece. At merely 1 million or so, if it's 10 million, no, but the budget, everyone else was impressed by Ruppa's skill in making this mobile golem, but SEI maintained a troubled look on his face. Certainly, it was amazing. If one were to ask about its comfort, it was definitely comfortable. But why was it a camping car? Why was something that should exist only on Earth being produced here? And its name, wasn't Suzuki that Suzuki? Cruz and the others seemed to think that Suzuki was the name for this kind of vehicle, similar to a horse carriage and demi-dragon carriage. But they were wrong. It was the name for this specific camping car and Rapaz knew it as well. In fact, when SEI asked her about it, she responded naturally and asked, would you have preferred a truck instead? Indeed, as she herself said, she knew about Earth. She knew about Earth's technology. In addition, it had a strange name like Suzuki. No, no. Calm down. This is not the place to play the straight man. The problem was not the name. To be honest, there were a lot of points to retort. He wouldn't really care if people were to ask him if he was performing a gag. The main issue was why Rapaz knew about these things. Rapaz had knowledge of Earth. In other words, it was possible to acquire such knowledge in this world and she somehow managed to get it. There were similar situations in the stories that SEI was familiar with in the past. The protagonists were fighting various enemies in another world when the last big boss knew about Earth and was planning an invasion. As he thought this, SEI's natural complexion turned pale. No, that's impossible, I think. Migres said that Rapaz is not the enemy. But there was a precedence. Whether she was good or evil aside, the truth was that her attempt to conquer the world 200 years ago was already engraved into the annals of history. In that case, what if, her target also included Earth? Migres said that she aimed to forcefully unify the world because she was worried about Midgard. To put it in another way, she would resort to violent means if it was for Midgard's benefits. Wouldn't it be possible then? It would be the worst-case scenario where she aimed for the technological capabilities of Earth in order to enrich and develop Midgard. As he thought this, SEI shook his head. Once he started thinking, his thoughts would gradually s.h.I plus foot in a pessimistic direction and a.s.sum the worst possible scenario. It was his bad habit. SEI-kun, are you alright? Your face doesn't look that good though, Virgo, who noticed something strange about his look, asked with concern. He hurriedly raised his head and his eyes met those of Virgo, who was staring at him intently. Fluffy pink hair, big eyes, white skin, and pure white wings. She looked exactly like an angel, causing SEI to become fluid u.s.teared. It wasn't something he could get used to, no matter how many times he saw her. Her features were simply so out of the ordinary. Or rather, the more he tried to get used to it, the less resistant he became to her presence. Are you sure? You're not overdoing it. I'm fine. No problem. Endure. Endure, my rationality. Now is the time for your steel-like will. SEI desperately controlled himself. By sheer willpower, he succeeded in subduing the instinct of a man who was lost in admiration of Virgo. However, in his mind, an exceedingly muscular macho man appeared before his steel-like rationality. Man is a beast, he said and shattered his rationality with a hammer. No, who the heck are you? SEI willed himself to appear in the mental world in his brain and grabbed the macho man, tossing him into the sky. He then quickly repaired his rationality, forcefully patching things together. But Virgo followed up ruthlessly and placed her soft hand on SEI's forehead. It's not hot, right? What was this? What was this cliched situation in which a girl got too close to a guy without noticing it herself? It was like a scene straight out of romantic comedies. Am I going to die? Could it be that I'm going to die today? Have I used up all the luck I have and now I'll die miserably? While he was thinking about this, he became aware that his heart was inevitably beating louder. Hey, stop it. Please leave me alone. I'll seriously fall in love. At that moment, Suzuki's light was S.H.I plus-ning brightly, even though it was not visible to SEI and the others. Encountering the highest priority situation ordered by Master C.R.A.P removal mode, activate. Suddenly, Suzuki's ceiling opened and the sofa SEI was sitting on automatically flew upwards, sending him to the roof. Then, the roof closed and he was left alone. Of course, there was also a sofa on the roof, so it wouldn't be any less comfortable. However, he couldn't get back inside for a while. This was one of the orders given by the overprotective Rapaz to Suzuki: if anyone tries to hit on Virgo, expel him to the roof for some time. This was the rear exclusion mode. However, this lacked consideration as Suzuki, who did not know of the intricacies of the human mind, took action even though Virgo was the one who initiated contact. Thanks to it, there was this tragic incident whereby SEI was expelled to the roof even though he did nothing wrong. What did I do? Suzuki proceeded on while SEI cried out. Their destination was the demi-human village where the centaurs lived. N.O. Body noticed that, from the top of a giant tree in the forest, a cane spider demi-human was watching.